Artist over 50, here's the only excuse you need to set aside 15 minutes a day for an art practice and create the habit. I'm breaking it down into simple terms, how and why painting can help brain health after 50. Plus, a really fun abstract floral technique using PanPastels that's totally smudge proof. Lots to unpack. Let's jump in. Did you know that making art physically changes your brain and helps build new neural pathways while strengthening old ones? Woohoo! A legitimate excuse to do art, as if we needed one, right? A few years ago, I began looking for natural ways to help age gracefully, which includes keeping the mind sharp. So I don't walk into a room forgetting what I went into the room for in the first place. I discovered something called neuroplasticity. Big word, even bigger reason to understand it as we age. It's literally our brain's superpower to adapt and rebuild, rewire through mental workouts like painting. You may want to reference this video again. It's easier to find if you hit subscribe. I'm Penny. I share art styles and natural health strategies to help artists over 50 age gracefully. Paint more, age less. I have personally experienced the many facets of brain neural damage, from work with traumatic brain injuries in my first career to watching my only child have an AVM brain aneurysm right in front of me, then diving into the rehabilitation that followed. So this topic hits home hard for me in more ways than one. I share this information in an effort to help others understand it can be possible to rebuild and rewire brain pathways through creativity like painting. I'll do my best to break it down on how and why as simply as possible because I firmly believe it can be a game changer as we age. I'll provide a list of other neuroplasticity exercises at the end of this video. But there's a reason that art therapy has been around for a long time. Creative work like painting is a heavy mental workout. That includes 3 components. I'll keep this light. Number 1, something called dual hemisphere communication, which simply means art mixes creative intuition with logical planning. This builds that communication superhighway between the left and the right side of the brain. As you draw and or paint, traffic is buzzing back and forth on the highway between the 2 halves of the brain. I heard this referenced in a movie once as lightning in a bottle. Tell me in the comments below if you know what movie that phrase is from. It is a relative topic. Okay, number 2, enhanced connectivity. Painting links 2 brain networks. Your imagination network with your focus network. It forces your brain to switch between the imagination network of neurons for creating, dreaming, and the focus network for sharp, practical action. The imagination network literally lights up when you daydream, remember the past, or picture new ideas in your mind. For example, visualizing a scene to paint or a feeling you want to convey onto your canvas. The focus network activates when you solve hard problems, pay close attention, or control your body. So basically doing the physical work. It guides your hands, it mixes colors on the palette, and it places the paint on the canvas. All the while, a third network acts as a switchboard, and it's handling communication back and forth, deciding which gets attention at the moment. A smooth operator. Ooh, favorite song. Do you know who sings that? Number 3, neurogenesis stimulation. This one gets a little sciencey, so stick with me. Drawing, painting, sculpting releases a protein called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. In simple terms, it's a necessary protein that supports our neurons, the growth, and survival. It is key for the brain to adapt, reorganize, and form new neural pathways triggered by things like learning, experiences we've had, and even injury. So, are you starting to see how doing creative activities like painting can help new neurons and pathways grow while strengthening old ones? What things do you do to keep the mind sharp? Join the discussion below, tell us in the comments, or ask a question. Just be respectful. Now, let's connect the dots on how this all works. How does the brain grow stronger when you practice art 15 minutes daily? Well, there's 3 main ways. It aids in fine motor control skills. In other words, moving your brush across the canvas creates dense networks in the motor cortex of the brain. That's the region of the brain's frontal lobe that controls voluntary movements. It sends neural signals down the spinal cord to direct the muscles to the actions. So your brain is telling your hand where and how to place the brush on the canvas. Great exercise, right? 2, improves visual spatial processing. So basically kind of how we see things, how the brain translates what it sees, where objects are in relation to each other and to you. Measuring shapes and sizes can thicken the gray matter in the parietal lobe. That's the top back area of the head. I like to think of it as keeping it strong, not soft and mushy from lack of exercise. This area processes sensory information like touch and temperature and pain and spatial awareness. So now you're kind of starting to see the pieces come together, to see how doing art is very spatial. Asking the brain constantly where objects are in relation to each other and the viewer yourself. So where to place them on the paper as you draw. We as artists already know that drawing or cutting in shapes is a mental workout. I think this is even more intense for urban artists because there's so much spatial information for the brain to take in and translate from 3-dimensional to paper. Number 3, stress reduction. I live for this one. Let's get technical here for just a second. Ever heard of cortisol? It's a steroid hormone produced by the adrenal gland. I really only want this guy around if it's a desperate situation. Cortisol acts as a biochemical messenger triggered during times of stress. It has its purpose, however. But chronic high levels are not good, usually driven by everyday modern stressors like traffic, work deadlines, family demands, and more. This wreaks havoc on the body and is linked to many health issues like weight gain, high blood pressure, anxiety, poor sleep, and overall weakened immune system. Even more importantly, and less talked about, high levels of cortisol can damage and shrink the brain's main memory center. What's that called? Oh yeah, the hippocampus. Cortisol upsets how our memory neurons communicate. So it can impair the formation of new long-term memories, potentially make recalling old memories even harder. Kind of like me trying to remember everything I want to tell you without notes, which are here on my screen because I have camera anxiety and my mind goes blank as soon as the red light comes on. Now, all that said, yes, painting lowers your stress. Getting into a creative flow drops your cortisol levels. I can honestly say for many years I was a long distance runner and experienced a runner's high frequently on runs. During those runs, they were very enjoyable, pretty much pain-free, and time just melted away. Otherwise, on the days I didn't have the runner's high, I was in pain and just wanted to stop. For me personally, I found that getting in a creative flow can give me a similar feeling to the runner's high. And honestly, I really didn't even realize or recognize this was a thing until I started preparing this video and I was like, oh yeah, I've had a creative high. This creative flow can help protect your memory center from damage. Onto a creative flow example as I break down the supplies and steps for creating this touchable pan pastel abstract floral. We are going to do this abstract floral done in pan pastels and mixed medium. So this is a notebook, is mixed media notebook, but it's a lightweight 180 GSM paper, so it will not handle what I'm doing today. So I've coated the pages with acrylic gesso. And then next you see me using inks. So I'm using these 2 different inks to lay down my background. I have a dark and a light shade, and I'm using this wedge to just spread it. I have our trusty plexiglass behind there, and so I'm drying the page from the front and the back after I've applied the ink, just to make sure it's really nicely dry. And then I'll wash this plexiglass off and dry it real good before I put it back down, because the page will stick to it if not. Now I'm applying pastel grounds with our wedge. Pastel grounds is by Golden, and this gives us a texture on top of that ink. As you saw, it was a little bit shiny, so it gives us a texture that pastels will grab to, a tooth. Just drying the page again, and I cleaned off the plexiglass, and I'm drying the page after the grounds. And then next we're going to start working with our pan pastel colors. So we're going to be doing some purples and some yellows and some turquoises. So there's a couple of dark purples here that we're using. And then we're going to be adding some pinks. And we're just using these triangle sponges. I love these triangle sponges because we're just literally using them to make shapes on the page. That's all I used to create these flowers, was the edge of the triangle sponges. These are awesome. Plus, it looks like they're dirty, but they're not, because I've washed them. It's just the color stains them. Now you'll see the napkin below where I'm working at here in just a second, and you see me picking up the notebook and shaking. I'm literally picking up the notebook, and I'll stand it up. What I'm doing is I'm just the dust. So you do get a little bit of dust residue as you're working with any pastel. PanPastels is far less than any other pastel I've worked with. So, but I'm just shaking that off so I don't get my hand in it and smear it across the page and have it all over my hands. And it's easy if you've got a napkin on the table, because you can just fold the napkin over top of the dust to keep it from going everywhere while you're working. So now I'm working in some turquoise colors here and starting to add in some yellows. These pan pastels have the most wonderful, vibrant colors ever. And you're seeing the napkin at the bottom, you're seeing me wipe, so I'm cleaning off the sponge. At the same time, I'll also swatch colors down there, because I don't swatch my colors before I start painting. I just don't. It's just not who I am. But so I'll swatch them quickly on the napkin right before I apply them. I'm in a flow here. I'm in a creative flow during this painting, and I'm shaking off that dust again. And so I've got two flowers created, two abstract flowers created, and a flower bud. And now I'm starting to work with some greens here. And I'm just applying the greens and creating a little bit of foliage. You got to love the vibrancy in these colors. Now that is going to change just a little bit as we go through this process to make it touchable and smudge, completely 100% smudge proof. That's the really cool thing about this technique. So what you're not seeing is I'm taking it outside to spray with Crystal Coat. And I love Crystal Coat. This fixative changes the color very minimally. So I took it outside, sprayed it with Crystal Coat. Now I dried it with the blow dryer. And then I applied Liquitex acrylic medium. And then I just went down the page with this tool, which is literally a plastic sheetrock tool. And now I'm drying the page really well after applying our matte medium. Now you can see it did darken the colors. So you just kind of plan for that as you're planning your project. You just need to know that your colors are going to darken slightly when you apply the acrylic medium. The Crystal Coat changes it very little. So I'm kind of going back in here with some of the pan pastels and brightening back up the colors, dusting it off. Sprayed a little bit of the fixative on it, which you really don't want to spray in the house, but. And then I tried applying some colors with a paintbrush, and I really didn't like that technique. So I decided to break out another favorite product to go on top here and bring back some of the bright colors. And that is the Caran d'Ache Luminous pencils. You'll see me using two different types of pencils here. Both of them are by Caran d'Ache. This is the Luminous. The Luminous pencils, they are an oil and a wax blend. So they're creamy. super soft core. They lay down thick, velvety color. It's very little pressure is required, and they blend super seamlessly. I'm applying some additional matte medium on the areas I worked, so not to smudge my pencil work. But the Luminous, even though they are a little bit softer pencil, they hold up extremely well. You'll see the glare here from where I have applied the matte medium again. So just working on getting that to dry, and then I'm grabbing our Pablo pencils. The Pablo pencils have a harder core. They are 100% oil-based core, and that's one of the reasons why they're completely water resistant. Now, having a harder core, they will hold a sharper point, and they'll feel a little bit drier when you work with them. It helps your lines to be super crisp when building up subtle layers, whereas the Luminous allows you to build and blend a little better. So that's the difference between these two particular brands of colored pencils. I encourage you to play around with PanPastels because you can make some really cool designs, especially if you use the technique I'm showing you. This, even though this has texture to it, it's completely touchable. I can literally just wipe my hand across it. And then there's a lot of different things you can do with the PanPastels. There's another one here. It's a favorite. If you'd like to learn more about creating touchable pan pastel paintings and an anti-anxiety tea, then click this video next.